and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge. And it is, of course, coming out of round 6 of BBL SuperCoach. And yeah, it was an okay round. It wasn't the best. We were hoping for a little bit better. And it would have been had we backed ourselves in, followed our gut, which is something that we always preach, and we somehow just forget to practice. So I'll get into that in a moment. But before we get into things, of course, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, we would really appreciate your support in doing so. So feel free to do that. And without further ado, let us get into it. Boo-boo. So check us out how we went. And we ended up scoring a 681 for the round, which was okay. I mean, you can see there the round 6 rank in terms of the score for the round was much higher compared to last round, which was an absolute bloody travesty. But you'll see in the season rank, I ended up sliding 63 spots to now sit 486th overall. Not ideal. There were a couple of sliding doors moments, which, as I said, I'll get into in a moment when I go through my team. But I think by and large, we've been sliding over the past couple of rounds at least. And we've got, 3 rounds left in the season to climb our way back up to where we were, which was the season high. I think it was, 222nd or thereabouts. So it is achievable, and we are still aiming for a top 100 rank, which we have done, I think, just outside the top 100 in our history playing BBL SuperCoach. But we are going for, I think this is our 9th season in a row of a rank inside the top 1K. So we're on track for that, which is good. Knock on wood, there aren't any major, I guess, speed humps, but we almost encountered a couple of those this week because the dreaded weather impacted the round yet again with a washout. So let's get into things without further ado and check out our team. So as you can see there, in terms of the trades that I made, you would have seen in the previous video, but they did alter off the back of that because I did warn people about the washout, and the forecast was looking quite grim. And I know there's some people that went all in on Sydney Thunder players, which I didn't want to do. Initially, I was only really keen on 4 to 5 players anyway, considering the Thunder have really been a bit of a bogey team for me when I've loaded up in the past with double game round players. So I thought I'd be a little bit more cautious this time around. But you'll notice compared to the video that I released previous, talking about my trades, that there are a couple of players missing, and there were players that actually scored quite well for the Thunder that I kind of, I guess, deviated from because I was worried about that potential washout, which, as we know, came into effect. But those players, I should say, they were Davey Warner and they were Ferguson. So Ferguson I was pretty keen on, and I was kind of happy enough to take the risk on fading Warner. He's been in good form, and I thought he was due for a bit of a downer. Worked against me, of course. I think he scored about 70 or thereabouts, maybe on the dot. And Fergie ended up scoring 80 odd as well. So both of those didn't pay off, and it hurts as well because I faded the wrong guys. And even though I made the right call in being cautious with regards to the weather forecast and knowing that in all likelihood it was going to be a washout, the guys that I went for didn't go well at all. So I ended up trading in Chris Green. He was the one guy that I kept hold of in terms of those mooted trades that I spoke about in my previous video. Agar already had in my team, and he was absolutely putrid. I think it hurts even more so that I brought him in a week earlier than most people because of his super low negative break even, and he had a shit one. I think he scored 4 the previous round, and then in the double, which ended up being the single, of course, due to the washout, scored the 24. Was very, very lucky to have that late wicket because I think he conceded almost the most runs, I think, in an over it might have been, or a single game or something like that. He made his way into record books in not the good way. So he was absolutely pitiful and has been, I think, hands down the worst trade-in of the season to date. So at least I'm not alone there because his ownership did creep up towards the higher ranks, which was 19%. But it's just, it is annoying because historically he has been that sort of player where he's been very much hit or miss when he was playing for the Strikers. And knowing that, I was a little bit cautious, but I thought everyone's going to jump on him. He's had 2 good games when he started the season where he scored a 102 and a 104 and then followed up with 4 and 24. So yeah, wasn't the best trade in. Let's just say that. And yeah, to date, that's the worst. And hopefully it doesn't get worse than that, which I don't think it can. Um, Outside of Chris Green being the trade in, I ended up bringing in Finn Allen. So I spoke about him as a potential in, and the only option I was keen on bringing him in as was off the bench as a loophole player, which, as you can see, is what I did because of his, I guess, varying form across the journey. Started the season like utter shit and then actually turned it on the previous 3 games. So, yeah, it's kind of a hit or miss type player. And I thought if I'm going to start him, it's going to be off the bench. So it ended up working out well there, scored 49, ended up, trying to loop him on, which is what I did with Overton, and claim that 49 that he scored there. So he was my other trade-in. And as for the third trade-in, as it turned out, it was Xavier Bartlett, and it's someone that's higher end, higher priced, but super high quality, someone that I've had in my team in previous seasons, especially towards the back part of the year or the season. I remember last year I brought him in around about this time, and he absolutely killed it. It was him and Tall Paul as my 2 trade-in options. I think when they were on their double game round last season, and they absolutely smashed it. So I was kind of harping back to that, and it's funny as well. Again, sliding doors, but I was choosing between Bartlett or Johnson. And again, Johnson was someone that was, I think, a cheapie last year and ended up scoring quite well and served me well. So I was kind of tossing and turning between those. Nisa was probably the third option as well, but I wasn't too keen on him coming back in his first game back from injury, even though he has been, well over it. But I just traditionally don't like to do that. So when Nisa ended up scoring quite well, getting a couple of wickets, I thought, here we go. But that wasn't the end of it. And of course, Johnson came out and smashed it, and Bartlett didn't do too well, only scored the 25, but could have been much worse. We're happy enough at least with that because I think he's had a wicket pretty much in every single game this season, apart from round 3, the first of the double game rounds in round 3. So I think he's that player that is traditionally, a sort of a highish floor, super high ceiling type player. And this time of the year, you want those players in your team. So happy enough that I've got him. But, if I went for Johnson instead, I would have been equally as happy and probably even more so happy in this round in particular because he absolutely smashed it. So those are my 3 trade-ins. So I only traded in the 1 Thunder player outside of those 2 that I already had in Sam Billings and Agar. And Chris Green, of course, was that player that came into my team. So ended up dodging, by and large, the washout, but not completely because I already had Chris Jordan in my team. Of course, the Hurricanes were in that washout game, so it meant that Chris Jordan, he was virtually just a 0 in my team, so the flex didn't count for me, and unfortunately it meant that the flex didn't count towards covering even more so the low scores of Connolly with a 2, Chris Green with a 10, and the like. So it could have been a better score off the back of that, but, I guess that's where the flex comes into it and, definitely helps because otherwise other seasons I would have actually had a 0 if that was the case. So, can't complain about that. So let's go through our team line by line. So Sam Billings, I put on the bench there as a bit of a loophole option with the 20, ended up locking it in because of the fact that, after they played the first game, the Thunder, and then it became apparent that their second game was going to be washed out. I was like, I need as many points as I can get on field, especially considering that I'm not going to be able to have Jordan's score, whatever he would have scored. So ended up using Doran as that loophole player. For the batsman, Jamie Overton, he initially was actually a trade out for me. I traded him out to Warner potentially, and Ferguson was the other trade in as I spoke of earlier. And I ended up trading out, I think it was the same players that I ended up trading out, which I can't recall who it was, but I think it was Philippi was the other trade out. And I ended up reversing it. It was Philippi, Thornton, and another player. I can't recall who it was. I can't recall, but actually I can have a look here. Let me have a look ever so quickly because it's going to be racking my brain. So Philippi, Thornton, and Turner was the other one I traded out, which was a good call with Turner because he put in another shit one and dropped even more cash. So glad I got rid of him and brought in Bartlett, Allen, and Green. So there you go. But yeah, Overton was someone that I had out of my team initially, and I had Philippi in my team. when I knew that the game was going to be a washout between the Thunder and the Hurricanes, I was fiddling around with things and I'm like, looking ahead, which is something I'll speak about in a moment, forecasting ahead to round 7. But the early whisper is, yes, Sydney is coming into effect yet again with their shit weather, that the Sydney Sixers and the Perth Scorchers game could be a washout, which is this Saturday, the 11th of Jan at the SCG. So when I had a look at that and heard some early whispers about it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get the early jump on things and get rid of Philippi and bring back in Overton. So I never really wanted to get rid of Overton out of my team anyway, because he's probably one of the better, more consistent performers, bar maybe 1 or 2 games, but he has been that really, really high ceiling type player and was someone that I didn't want to lose out of my team because, I think you can kind of group in the same category, Sutho, Overton, and Maxi, and even then Matt Short when he's fit, as the players you want in your team for those single game rounds because of the fact that they have a really, really high ceiling and they've got a relatively high floor as well. So apart from the one game in round 4 where he scored a 3, every other game Overton has scored 99, 61, 103, 131, 68, and a 60. So again, that sort of scorer we don't want to be losing out of our team. So bit the bullet, got rid of Philippi. And as it turned out, getting rid of Philippi was the good move because he only scored, he had a break even, I think it was of 10, and he only scored 18. So now he went up 3.2K, granted, but now has a projected loss of 15.8K if he's able to even score 66 in the game against Perth if it goes ahead. So again, traded him out with, again, looking ahead, projecting forward and planning ahead because this is what will get you ahead of the rest of the competition, fingers crossed, if things go to plan and in your favour. But I think that was a good calculated move and, that would have allowed me to get an extra player potentially. I would have swung some things around maybe, who knows, but that was a bit of a risk and paid off. So Overton, he's back in my team, sitting pretty there, and Sutherland, he absolutely smashed it. Now, I speak of him with a bit of a regret in a sense because he scored 166, and I remember heading into this game, I actually went out for dinner with the parents-in-law and my lovely wife, of course, for my father-in-law's birthday, and we're at a pub, and I completely forgot the game time and stuff and sat down at the table, looked across at the TV that was on and saw the first ball was being bounced, and I'd missed the chance to put the VC on the captaincy, I should say, on Sutho because I put the VC on Green first up, who miffed it with a 10. So yeah, I would have been able to lock in the highest score of the round in my team if I was able to do that, but it is what it is. Life gets in the way. That's that. But just super happy with the fact that Sutho finally repaid the faith with the 166 because I think he was the most traded out player for the round. Which was incredible. Dropped 2.2% in ownership. And, geez, people are going to be scrambling to try and get him back into their team. And that's the thing, like, these all-rounder type players are the ones you want in your team because they get, virtually 2 bites of the cherry at being able to score in their match they play. But also, they got the high floor, high ceiling, the works. So happy enough with that. Cooper Connolly, now, he was the opposite. Only scored a 2, played him on field, which pretty much everyone had done so, and was the one down game for him of the season. But I'm a little bit worried because he only bowled the 1 over, and it does mean that I think with the return with Agar back in the team, with Morris in the team, their bowling attack is absolutely stacked, and then they've got Hardy as well, of course, who can roll the arm over. So Cooper Connolly is a little bit down the order, and I think the chances of him, bowling his full allocation of 4 overs a game is going to be quite reduced. So the chance of that happening quite slim, I should say. So I don't know about his future in my side. Prior to that, he has been a very, very nice scorer. He's still batting top 3, and that's kind of where he's been doing the most damage. So the game that he had against the Renegades, where he went out for virtually a duck, was against the trend because he's been able to score quite consistently 64, 14, 66, 37, 48 and 43 with the bat. And he only scored the 2 with 2 dot balls that he had in his 1 over. So again, it minimises the amount of points that he can output if he's only a batter only, but again, he's been scoring quite well with the bat. So you can kind of go either way with Scoops. Moving on to Steinberg, and ended up scoring a 57. Early on, he didn't look too good. With the bat, he wasn't the best performer, and ended up recouping that with the ball. So only scored 4 runs with the bat, and then with the ball. And I said he's been in a lean trend. He's been bowling, which is unlike previous seasons, pretty consistently, but he hadn't taken a wicket since the second double game round in round 1. So he's taken 2 wickets this game and ended up scoring 57. So that was pretty good. And he was up there. I mean, in terms of captaincy options that I did have at the end of this round in that last game between the Sixers and the Stars, it was between Edwards, Stoinis, and Maxi. And I'll speak about that now. So Maxi, I had originally had the captaincy on the entire time throughout the round. And I was just super worried that, if Maxi was pushed up the order, I would have taken the risk. But considering he was still named at 6 in the batting order, I was like, stuff this. Like, is he even going to get a bat? And he's been quite lucky being able to get most of his scores in recent weeks in the outfield, taking catches. He does have prime position in the positions that he plays as a fielder, but again, I didn't want to rely upon that if you didn't get a chance of getting a bat, which has happened a couple of stages during this season. And considering he's not bowling as well, again, he's virtually just a batter only, plus being a fantastic fielder. So ended up changing it to Edwards, who I thought was more of a safer pick. And as it turned out, Edwards actually scored the least of those 3 with 48. Stoinis then scored 57 and Maxi with the most with 113. So it is what it is. 48 in a single game week. I mean, we'll call it single game week because the Thunder Hurricanes game was washed out, but it's not the worst, but it's also not the best. It's, you look at what could have been with Maxi and, you doubt yourself and you start kicking yourself afterwards if it doesn't go your way, but is what it is. Finn Allen spoke of him off the bench for 49, so really good with that, and even more so as well because he had a really low break even and is a very nice cash injector as well because he went up 29.9k. And now has a break even of -6 and is someone that can really loop off your bench as well. So that was the main reason I got him in my team because round 7, Perth play second. That is if the game goes ahead and isn't washed out. Round 8, Perth play first. So you can definitely use him as a loophole there off the bench. And then round 9, he plays the third game. So you can try and maybe a loophole someone else off the bench, maybe a Sutho, maybe an Edwards, the like as well. Totally up to you. Salzman, of course, not doing much, just there on the bench. Bowlers, Tom Rogers was incredible. I think there was a few people that traded him out because he had a bit of a lean game, and as what tends to happen, the good players bounce back, and that he did with 119. Really, really good. Yeah, his ownership dropped by 1%, which is pretty hefty, and when we're talking about BBL ownership, so happy with that. Xavier Bartlett, spoke about him, 25, and he'll bounce back. He's a quality player. Happy enough that I have him in my team. Maxi, spoke of him, an absolute incredible player, 113. You can't keep a good man down, even if he's not bowling. And he ended up scoring that 58. Fast scoring as well. Strike rate bonus of 25. And he had another bonus of 10 and a catch as well. And he actually dropped one, which was a relative sitter as well. So probably could have had another extra couple of points in the bank. And then I think he went for a diving catch as well, which is a bit harder, but by his standards, he probably would have taken it 9 times out of 10, but happy enough with that score. And he has repaid the faith now after riding him with that cash loss over the past few weeks, and now actually went up 10.3k and he has a break even of 9. So he is in 24% of teams, and I wonder the amount of people out there that might be keen to try and scramble and get him into their teams. It's surprising as well because his ownership dipped from 27% out of round 3 to 21.3% in round 4. Round 5 was 21.9%, so went up 0.6. And then going into round 6, he actually went up 2.1% in ownership, which is quite interesting. I guess considering his price point, he had bottomed out, and people were jumping on a relative bargain there of an absolute superstar. So if you don't have him in your team, I would recommend getting him. I spoke of Chris Green, putrid. and scored a 10. And Wes Agar, he was bottom of the barrel type stuff with the 24, conceding wides, no balls, everything, the works, terrible. I can't wait to get him into my team. So let's quicken things up so we can chat about trades. Wildermuth and Scott just doing nothing on the bench there as loophole players, as bowlers. And with the flex, as I said, Chris Jordan didn't play due to the washout, but he's in my team early on, considering the value that he presented with a negative break even the last round. And he's someone that I'm happy to have in my team in preparation for the Hurricanes double. So now let's get into our projected trades. Of course, things can change, as we know, with last round, considering washouts and weather, especially weather in Sydney, which is absolutely shit at the moment. But let's have a look at the fixture, round 7. First up, we have Hobart and the Thunder as well. So a bit of a rematch in a sense. This time it is in Hobart at Ninja Stadium. And I mean, in terms of those players let's first and foremost break it down into those players in my team that made a loss and made some cash. So Sutho went up 9.3, Stoyne went up 17.7, Jack Edwards went down 13.4k, Tom Rogers up 11k, Bartlett 9.3k down, Maxi 10.3 up. Chris Green actually went up, which is interesting. I had a low break even, 6.7k off the back of a 10, and Wes Agar only lost 9.5, and I say only because he probably should have lost more than that, and I was probably thankful for that washout, considering I didn't have to watch him put up some absolute dirt in a second game, so that was a blessing in disguise. Sam Billings went down 24.5k, which is interesting, and Finn Allen went up 29.9k as that nice sort of loophole cash cow off the bench. But in terms of those players that I'm looking to move on, I think, Chris Green and Wes Agar 100%. And outside of that, it becomes a little bit interesting in terms of who we want to move on. And it's kind of linked in with that potential washout game between the Sixers and the Scorchers. As putting in I guess the line of sight here is potentially Jack Edwards from the Sixers if it is a washout. I don't really want to get rid of him, but it just works out well, I think, in this sense if it is a washout, because it's an easy one to get rid of. Because the other guys that I have in my team, I don't really want to move on. I mean, Cooper Connolly, yes, he's probably the other player, but there's no one else. So let's get into things. Let's start with Chris Green and Agar out of our side. And in terms of those guys that we're keen to bring into our team, if we're talking about pure bowlers, and it's obviously a single game week, but, at this stage of the season, you want to get, the best quality players, but also players that could potentially be a pod and, lower ownership that could give you a bit of a leg up over the rest of the competition. So we're looking to tick both of those boxes, or at the very least one of those. So we will scroll down here on the list. Spencer Johnson is someone that I'm keen on, but I don't know. I mean, we've already got Xavier Bartlett. Do we want to double up with a Heat player just in case? I mean, diversification is the name of the game, but 2 quality pacemen with Nisa back in the team as well for Heat. That was kind of my thinking as well, that Spencer Johnson may have been, there's less slice of the pie to go around with another quality bowler in Nisa in the Heat side. So, in all likelihood, Johnson could have a bit of a down game this coming round. Who knows? But as I said, with quality bowlers, I think Berendorf's definitely one. He went up 7.8k to now sit priced at 187.5k. Has a break even of 64, which is achievable by his standards. And I didn't speak of it as well, but the initial trade that I was looking to bring into player that I was looking to trade into my team was either Lance Morris or Berendorf. And kind of kicking myself, I think Morris ended up scoring 66, Berendorf 99. That was kind of the alternative to Xavier Bartlett. So again, much of a muchness. I think end of the day, we're going to try and get all these really good players into our team. But it's just it's a case of trying to pick them up at the right time. Bo Webster I like as well, but I think the Stars have a bye coming up, if I am not mistaken. Let's have a quick look at the fixture for the Stars. Yeah, round 8, they have the bye. So if you're bringing in Bo Webster, you're bringing him in for one game, and then he's going on a bye. So you virtually resigned to the fact that you're trading him in, and then we'll probably have to trade him out. This stage of the season as well, I don't think you can really carry players on your bench. unless you really need loophole players, which I imagine a lot of people like me don't. So yeah, it's kind of an in-out situation. Do you do it? Maybe. But yeah, it's totally up to you. Nathan Ellis, I quite like. Looking ahead to the Hurricanes double, Meredith, I think, is someone that I'm really, really keen on. He is actually 31 or nearly 31K cheaper than Nathan Ellis, and he's actually scored more than Ellis. I mean, mind you, he's played one extra game, but Meredith overall has been quite consistent. And he was actually someone that I was keen in starting in my team because of his pure value. Started priced at 83.2K, now priced at 117.9. And for pretty much every game, he's had a wicket apart from one, which is round 3, where he scored a 1. But outside of that, he scored a 28, 112, 62, and a 38. So even though, I mean, you could kind of wait for him if you wanted to, but his break-even's 27, and I think he's going to reach that, and he will go up in price. Thinking ahead as well, planning ahead for the Hurricanes double, he's someone that I definitely want in my team for that. So I'm pretty keen to bring him in this week, a week early. But mind you, again, you could potentially hold off a week if you have other options to look at. Nikhil Chowdhury, the big chode, is someone that I would be keen on as well, potentially for the double. He's got a -6 break even, so if you want to go early on him to save a bit of cash, because he probably will go up in price. In fact, he will. All he needs to do is take the field, and he will go up in price to that -6 break even. Scored quite well with the bat and rolled the arm over with a couple of wickets here and there. So don't mind the big chode in Chowdhury. But I think in terms of value, the player that I'd be keen on is Jai Richardson. But again, asterisks here because of the fact that we don't know if the Sixers and Scorchers game is going to be a washout. Let us pretend that it's not going to be a washout, and we will definitely select Jai Richardson in our team. I think, weighing it up between Richo and Berendorf in our team, Richo has a break-even of 10. So we're playing the break-even game here. I think their ceiling is very, very similar. Both of these guys in Berendorf and Richo, but Richo scored quite well. 103, he had a 7 in round 2, which was interesting. And then upon return from the test team or test squad, 87 and 71. So an incredible player, as we know, one of my favourites in terms of pace bowlers in the BBL and especially BBL SuperCoach. So he's definitely one. I think outside of that, there is another player that I'd be keen on. And again, it comes from that dreaded game that could be a washout. And he goes by the name of Abbott. So there's a couple of options here. If the game, again, we'll pretend it's not going to be a washout, what we will be doing is potentially getting rid of a Cooper Connolly. Just sort of hedging our bets there that maybe he doesn't bowl as much for the remainder of the season because the Perth Scorchers bowling attack is just absolutely stacked, and Wes Agar is the one that is rolling the arm over as that traditional spin bowler. So we will be looking at another bowler. So 3 bowlers potentially coming in to my side, and it's another favourite of mine who is an absolute gun and killed it against the Stars, and it is Sean Abbott. 150.8K, went up in price, scored a 99, has a break-even of 22, so now is probably the time to get on him. Scored a 61, 41, and a 99. Just a really uber-consistent player. I spoke of it in the preseason, how undervalued he is. Started priced at 135.7, now 150.8, and will go up in price. So, again, if this game is not a washout, I think this is probably the trade-ins that I'm most keen on. And it is Green, Agar, and Cooper Connolly out, and in Meredith Richardson, that is Jai Richardson from the Scorchers, and Abbott from the Sixers. And that gives me a really, really healthy bowling attack here. Tom Rogers from the Renegades, Xavier Bartlett, Abbott, Meredith, Richo. And then in flex, Chris Jordan, who's just there, obviously, for that double coming up for the Hurricanes. Outside of those guys that are really missing is probably Berendorf, really, and then, of course, Johnson. When we're talking about, pure bowlers, straight-up bowlers. So I'm really, really happy with that, the construction of our bowling attack here. And I think that's kind of a set and forget for the remainder of the year, outside of maybe getting in a couple of extra Hurricanes players for their double in round 8, but might be Ellis, maybe Chowdhury, as I said. But outside of that, I think that's a set and forget. That's really overhauled our bowling attack in one round, so I'm really happy with that. Outside of that, if I was to keep Cooper Connolly, I would probably trade out Jack Edwards. But again, Edwards being able to roll the arm over as well, probably not as, he has scored okay with the bat, but not as well as Cooper Connolly. But he's probably more so that traditional dual threat with the bat and ball compared to Scoops. I just don't think, as I said, Cooper Connolly is going to be bowling as regularly as what he has been. And that leaves us with a side of Sam Billings, which isn't the best, but I mean, wicketkeepers at the moment are pretty shite. Batsmen, we have Overton, Sutherland, Maxey, Stoinis, and Edwards. Off the bench as that loop player is Finn Allen. For the bowlers, we have Tom Rogers from the Renegades, Bartlett, Abbott, Meredith, Richardson, that is Jai Richardson, and Chris Jordan as that flex player. And on the bench, we have Salzman, Liam Scott, and Wildermuth as our looping players as well. And Swingman, they're all DPP loops as well at that. So handy enough, but that's virtually it. I think if we were to, approach the game of the Sixers and the Scorchers with it being potentially a washout, we wouldn't be able to go for obviously Richardson and Abbott. So that changes things majorly. I think what we could do really we'd probably have to plan ahead maybe and go for another Hurricanes player maybe. There aren't really any batsmen that I'd be keen on outside of one guy that should be making his return for the Strikers. And he is someone, I spoke of wicketkeepers being shit. This guy's an absolute gun, and it's Alex Carey. He's still, 167.5, hasn't played a game as yet, but traditionally when he has come in late in the piece for the Strikers, when he's been released from the test team, he has actually scored quite well. So let's have a quick look at how he has done so in the latter part of previous seasons. So last season, he came into the side and ended up scoring, where are we? There it is. He ended up scoring an 81 in the one game that he played against Hobart, and that was off the back of a score of 36 with the bat, strike rate bonus. He had 20 points for a catch and 15 points for a stumping, so that was pretty good last season. Season prior to that, ended up scoring a 12, 84, which was a 54 score with the bat, 16, and then an 85 to end the season, and that was off the back of a 65 score with the bat. So again, he's someone that I'd be very keen on. If it isn't this round, he's probably someone that I'd be keen to bring into my side for maybe the next round, depending on how many other Hurricanes players want to get into my team. But again, I probably don't want to overload on those guys. There's probably another 3 guys that I'm looking outside of those that I've got, Meredith and Jordan. But Alex Carey, he's definitely someone that you should be looking at very closely. Has a break-even of 60 as well. Achievable by his standards. So Carey is probably one that I'd be keen to bring in if the Sixers and Scorchers game is a washout. But of course, we're not going to get early word of that, so we're going to have to kind of maybe have a bit of a guess as to whether or not it is, because when it comes to Carey, we've got Billings that we could use as a bit of a loop, but Doran obviously plays with the Hurricanes in that same game as well, so we need to make swings prior to that, and probably only be able to play Billings on field. I mean, we're not going to play Carey on field as a wicketkeeper and then Billings on the bench without another way to loop on Billings' score. So we're probably going to have to just swallow Billings' score, whatever he has this round. But yeah, Carey's definitely one. Who's another one? I mean, there is Smudge as well. Steve Smith. But again, washout game. There is Alice. Do we bring him in early? Who knows? Nisa. Yeah. It's a bit harder with the when we're looking at bowlers. If we look at batsmen, it's probably just as hard actually. Davey Warner, who we didn't have in our team, who's probably someone that is really nice to loop off the bench, but I can't do that because I've already got Finn Allen. It just means that I'd have to bite the bullet on either one of those guys on field, which is probably something I wouldn't want to do. Ideally, I'd like to have Davey Warner off the bench, but he's in good form, granted. Yeah, we'd need to look into it. Matt Short, is he going to be back? Is he going to be fit? Who knows? Yeah, as I said, Bo Webster. Do we take a bit of a throw at the stumps with him? Negative 14 break even, in out type operation. I'd probably look at that. Yeah, wouldn't mind that. Because he is low ownership as well, 13.5%. Not uber low, but low enough of someone of his quality who, he bowled, 3-4 overs against the Sixers and bats, third in the order. And that's probably pretty much it outside of that. So let's not hope for a washout, because we'd very much love to bring in Jai Richardson and, Abbott, because that would really set our bowling attack up. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think let's go with that for the time being. Let's undo that. Let's bring back in Connolly out, Meredith in, and then Abbott as well. Switching Maxwell into the batters category, and then bingo bango. Leaves us with 54.2k in the bank as well, which is very, very nice. So let's pray for Sydney weather. Let's do a non-rain dance. Let's do a sun dance and hope that we have clear skies in the second game of the round between the Sixers and the Scorchers. And we'll be set. I think this is very, very nice. For captaincy and vice captaincy, it is a single game round, of course, so really is up to you. There aren't really any Sydney Thunder players I'd be keen on, if you really had any. Hobart Hurricanes, could you go with the Meredith? That would be left of field, but no. I think Abbott is someone definitely that I'd be keen on if that game goes ahead. Richo likewise as well, so you could probably choose between those two. And then captain, it would probably be an Overton, I'd say. He's treated me well in the past. Or could you go with a Maxi? Hit some form at the right time. Does he potentially roll the arm over as well? Who knows? On the deck at Marvel Stadium, I think it is spin friendly. So, they've only got Mia, or Mur, as they pronounce his name. So, yeah, could we go with that? Maybe, Maxi. But that's pretty much it, ladies and gents. That is my team coming out of round 6 and what it may look like heading into round 7, of course. We will keep you updated across our socials, especially on Twitter/X. So make sure to follow us on there to get the latest news, up to date, everything related to washouts, rain, danger territory, all that sort of stuff. And you can do so at supercoach_edge, and you can follow my personal account at DamoJ88. We hope you had an absolutely fantastic round in round 6, better round than me anyway, and you saw a green arrow going up in the ranks, and likewise got a win in your leagues and cash leagues and the like. But that's it, ladies and gents. Again, really do appreciate the support. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, feel free to do so. That is the best way. Let us know that you are enjoying our content. So if you are enjoying it, hit that subscribe button. Really appreciate it. But outside of that, ladies and gents, hope you had a great round, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.